Da. Galfath Cynulliad Cenedlaethol Cymru I drefn. And item 1, cwestiynau I brief weinidog. And question 1 is Eleni Parrott.
Josh Llywydd. Will the First Minister make a statement on science education in Wales?
Yes, the teaching of science and STEM subjects are important priorities for the Welsh Government, and we remain fully committed to ensuring that science education is engaging and reflects the needs of business and the economy.
Thank you, First Minister. In advance of Science Week this week, Dr Lynn Evans came and gave a talk to the Assembly last week. You'll be aware, of course, that Dr Evans is the prominent Welsh scientist who built the Large Hadron Collider. And he told us about a project that they have at CERN to invite science teachers from across Europe to come and engage with them and professional development programmes that they run. But in the years that they've run that programme, and 1,000 UK teachers have been to it, not a single teacher from a Welsh school has attended. Can you tell us what the Welsh Government is doing to make sure that Welsh teachers have the opportunity to take up these exciting and truly inspirational professional development opportunities?
Yes, he told me the same thing last week when I met him on Thursday evening at the St David Awards. It is something I want to investigate, and I will do that, because if those figures are correct, then clearly we need to make sure that any barriers that may exist in terms of science teachers from Wales going to Switzerland are removed.
David Rees.
Diolch, Llywydd. First Minister, to create the scientists and engineers of tomorrow, we need to enthuse our children when at primary school. Do you agree that we need to ensure teachers of science in primary schools are fully aware of the opportunities of careers in science and engineering for both genders, and that's important, in order to inspire our children, and that they should be encouraged to partake in STEM challenges run by the professional bodies and industries, such as the F1 in Schools Challenge, supported by Jaguar and the Engineering Education Scheme Wales? Yes,
I'm very familiar with the ESW scheme. It's an excellent scheme, and it's right to say that schools in Wales are amongst the world leaders, literally, when it comes to the promotion of engineering at that age because of the F1 challenge. I've seen the excellent work that's done, that is continued, of course, to secondary level. And it is the case, I believe, that through schemes such as that, we are seeing more and more young people choosing STEM subjects to study at higher education, and particularly seeing more young women want to study STEM subjects as well. We need to ensure that all opportunities are afforded to both sexes when it comes to studying science.
Nick Ramsey.
First Minister, I'm sure you'd agree with me there can be no better way than encouraging children showing interest in science than showing them the wonders of the night sky. You may be aware that last week I hosted an event celebrating the first anniversary of the Brecon Beacons National Park achieving dark sky status, an international status. They put a heck of a lot of work into achieving that. Since they've received that status, there has been a huge increase in astronomy tourism in the Brecon Beacons. Will you tell us what your government is doing to support endeavours such as dark skies by the Brecon Beacons National Park, and also what you're doing to encourage schools across Wales to make the very most of this excellent asset, which, as I say, the Brecon Beacons National Park have put a lot of work into over the last year?
Well, it seems that the scheme itself is already working very well, and the fact that there are many more people coming to look at the night sky in the National Park is a sign that there is certainly a demand there as far as tourism is concerned, and the facility is there for people to be able to observe the night sky. And I very much commend the National Park Authority for the work that they have done in an area that perhaps was unusual in terms of taking it forward, but has proven to be very fruitful.
Rhys Iorwerth.
Diolch, Llywydd. Da ni ym Mhlaid Cymru'n sicr yn cefnogi ymdrechion I gynyddu nifer y myfyrwyr a llwyddiant y myfyrwyr hynny yn y pynciau STEM, ond mae o yn bryder bod y ffigurau diweddara'n dangos mae ymhlith myfyrwyr peirianneg a thechnoleg. Mae un o'r niferoedd uchaf o ddiweithra ymhlith graddedigion, rhyw 12% ohonyn nhw. Sut all y Prif Weinidog sicrhau bod datblygiadau yn digwydd enghraifft efo Parc Gwyddoniaeth y Môn sy'n troi diddordeb a llwyddiant academaidd yn y pynciau yma yn gyfleon go iawn mewn swyddi?
Wel, os ydych ni ar beth sydd ar gael yng Nghymru, sef y cwmnïau mawr fel Airbus, fel Renishaw, enghraifft ddim yn bell o fan hyn, cwmnïau fel Ford, fel Toyota, GE, BAMC, maen nhw gyd wrth gwrs yn cynnig cyfleon I bobl sydd wedi astudio yn y maes o ddylunio a thechnoleg. Hyd yn oed yna sydd wedi bod i'r brifysgol neu na, achos y ffaith bod yna cynlluniau prentysiaeth gyda nhw sydd wedi bod yn llwyddiannus dros ben. So felly, mae yna gyfleon ar gael, hynny'n wir, a fel Llywodraeth bydd ni'n sicrhau bod y cyfleon hynny yn cael ei estyn dros y blynyddoedd.
Question 2, Mike Hedges.
Minister outlined the Welsh Government's responsibilities over spectator safety at sporting events in Wales.
This is not a devolved area, it's a matter for the Sports Ground Safety Authority, and we expect them, of course, working with the major sports clubs and the police to ensure that spectator safety is paramount.
Thank you for that response, First Minister. And the two new stadiums at Cardiff and Swansea have made a big difference as well. And we've got a reputation in Wales for welcoming and treating very well away supporters at both rugby and soccer matches. Last month, hundreds of Swansea City supporters were paid a small fortune to travel to Naples to support the Jacks, missed the start of the match and the first goal as a result of excessive security delays and disorganised travelling arrangements made by the Neapolitan authorities. Does the First Minister share my concern over the treatment of the Swansea City fans, and will he raise this issue with his counterparts in the Foreign Office at the earliest opportunity?
Well, I'm aware that the South Wales Police worked with the Italian police to ensure that policing and security plans run smoothly. But ultimately, of course, the travel delays experienced by Swans fans rest with the authorities in Naples rather than with us in Wales. I understand that UEFA are aware of the matter, and we wait to see now what their response will be.
Mohammed Ashgar.
Madam Presiding Officer, First Minister, Lord Justice Taylor reports into the Hillsborough disaster in 1989 made a number of recommendations to secure the safety of people attending sports grounds. Since then, conditions have changed dramatically, with the Football Supporters Federation now calling for introduction on a trial basis of safe standing areas. Will the First Minister support safe standing areas on trial basis in Wales, please?
It's difficult to see how that would work, given the fact that the newer stadiums were designed to be all-seater stadiums. I remember the old terraces. They had some attractions in terms of the atmosphere. There were many other events that occurred in those terraces that people were less happy to relive, I suspect, over the years. But more than anything else, they were quite often dangerous. Let's not forget that football grounds up until the late 80s in the UK were ramshackle. No money had been put into spectator safety. No money had been put into ensuring that spectators had an enjoyable time and were safe. It was because of the Taylor report that we now have modern, up-to-date football grounds that are safe to visit and, of course, have been designed in such a way to avoid crowd trouble. Let's not forget that in the 1980s, crowd trouble inside stadiums was not uncommon. Crowd trouble outside stadiums was very common. It's because of the Taylor report that these issues have been largely resolved. I think we should think very carefully about trying to undo parts of it.
Bethan Jenkins.
First Minister, I'd like to agree with the comments made by Mike Hedges with regards to the Swansea fans. And I know that there is a meeting on the 20th of this month, UEFA disciplinary hearing with regards to the treatment by Napoli of the Swansea fans, and that South Wales Police have also put in a report to that particular disciplinary hearing. I wonder whether you as First Minister could ask for any of the report that will come from UEFA so that Assembly members, especially from the area, can understand fully what went wrong and how this cannot be replicated again in the future, as I know that it also happened to Arsenal fans who also went out there recently.
Well, yes, I hope that report is shared as widely as possible and as publicly as possible so we understand what exactly happened. Of course, there are many football supporters in Wales who had experience of being in Milan in 2003 when Wales, particularly, I know the member for Lisbon was there, and he was telling me 2 weeks ago of the difficulties that he had experienced there. So it builds on a difficult reputation that was already in place as far as Italian football grounds were concerned, and it's important that football fans from all over the world are made to feel both welcome and safe in Italy.
We now move to questions from the party leaders, and first this afternoon, the Leader of Plaid Cymru, Liam Wood.
The Secretary of State for Wales said yesterday that he was shocked by comments made by the First Minister regarding the electrification of the Valleys lines and the funding of it. Will the First Minister give this Assembly his version of events from July 2012? Was there a formal agreement between him and the UK Government? Was it in writing? And if so, would he be prepared to publish it?
There has been no agreement at any time that the Welsh Government should fund any of the electrification, and I'm more than prepared to share any correspondence with members.
Llywydd, it's obvious there's a difference of opinion between the First Minister's version of events and those of the Secretary of State for Wales. Is the First Minister saying that this issue was left open to interpretation? And would he agree with me that rail investment is too big an issue to leave to informal understandings?
Well, what I want to see is for electrification to occur. Yesterday, I was very careful to emphasise that what I wanted was clarification, which we have not yet had. I had a letter from the Prime Minister on Friday. It doesn't clarify the issue. The response from the Secretary of State was bordering on the hysterical, if I may put it that way, given the comment that I'd actually made. But let's just recap what has been said by various UK government ministers over the past 2 years. On the 16th of July of 2012, the then Secretary of State said over £350 million will be directly invested into the Welsh railway infrastructure. On the same day, the Leader of the Opposition said, this is a priceless boost to the region and Wales as a whole. This is Conservatives, this is what he said, this is Conservatives positively regenerating Wales, unlike Labour's managed decline. Now, if we were being asked to contribute to this scheme, well, how is it Labour's managed decline? On the 23rd of November, the Wales office said the UK government announced in July this year the electrification of the Valley lines around Cardiff, including the lines to Treherbert, Aberdare, Merthyr, Rumney, Ebbw Vale, and the lines from Bridgend to Maesteg and Cardiff to the Vale of Glamorgan. No mention there that the Welsh Government would be funding this. On the 31st of October, the Prime Minister said to the BBC in an interview, I know we need these infrastructure investments in Wales. It's this government that's putting money into electrification of the railway line to Swansea and, of course, the Valley lines. That is, to me, as clear as it possibly can be. Why on earth would we, as a government, look to fund something that isn't even devolved?
Order, 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 order. Liam Wood.
The deal is not clear, Llywydd. It's clear that the way in which investment in our railways is administered is inadequate and unclear. Now, Plaid Cymru wants to see railway services in public hands and fully devolved. How does the First Minister propose achieving and implementing the devolution of railway funding to Wales as recommended by the Silk Commission?
Well, this is something, of course, that needs to be discussed, but I'm very grateful to the Leader of Plaid Cymru when she again emphasises that this is not a devolved matter. And so why on earth would the Welsh Government look to pay for something that isn't devolved? What else are we going to be asked to pay for in the future? This is a devolved area. I notice, of course, that £4.7 billion is being put by the UK Government into Crossrail, £2.2 billion into HS2, but at the moment the impression is being given that when it comes to electrification of the Valley lines, and indeed of the main line from Cardiff to Swansea, that not a penny will be forthcoming from the UK Government. I want to see this project move forward. I want early clarification on what's been said by the Prime Minister and 2 Secretaries of State in the past in terms of their commitments. And the present Secretary of State said, again on the 16th of July 2012, this is an extra £4.2 billion worth of funding that we are announcing today, a lot of it going to the South Wales Valley lines. So we have 2 Secretaries of State and the Prime Minister and the Leader of the Opposition all saying this is an investment by the UK Government, no mention of the Welsh Government having to pay, and I expect those promises made orally to the people of Wales to be kept.
We're not in the Liberty Stadium in Swansea. We now move to the Leader of the Opposition, Andrew Archie-Davies.
Thank you. Thank you, Presiding Officer. First Minister, do you agree that Anne Clwyd should stop her campaign for better standards for patient care in the Welsh NHS, as the member for Torfaen indicated some 2 weeks ago in the Conservative-led debate?
What Anne Clwyd does, of course, is a matter for her.
Well, it was clearly stated from the member for Torfaen that she wanted Anne Clwyd to stop talking about the Welsh NHS. Yesterday, Anne Clwyd touched quite clearly on what she believed was the state of the Welsh NHS. She said, I quote, "This is a further firm evidence of a crisis facing the NHS in Wales. These are record-breaking figures," she was talking about diagnostic figures, "of the worst kind, and a further warning sign of a deep problem in the Welsh NHS." Do you understand those concerns that a senior member of your party is levelling against the way the NHS is run here in Wales?
Well, I'm afraid that Anne has based her allegations on the way her husband was treated. She has refused permission for the report surrounding her husband's treatment to be made public. I think it's important that for people to make a judgment on what happened, that report is made public, but that ultimately, of course, is a matter for others. What I do know is that this morning in the Times, a Conservative Secretary of State for Health is suggesting that the Welsh Block grant should be cut in terms of health. That's what he is saying, that funding for the Welsh NHS should be cut from Whitehall. Will he join me in condemning the comments of Jeremy Hunt?
As per usual, pretty shameful response from the First Minister. Anne Clwyd's comments are based on the evidence that she has gathered in the extensive consultations she has had with patients and clinicians in the work that she has undertaken into the effectiveness of the Welsh NHS. As she said yesterday when she looked at the diagnostic treatment waiting times here in Wales, where the 8-week wait is now in excess of 28,000 patients. For a term of reference to the member for Pontypridd, that's the same as the size of the town that he and I represent waiting for a diagnostic referral out of those waiting times. In England, that same figure is 1.8%. 1.8%, and that's over a 6-month period. First Minister, given you're so dismissive of Anne Clwyd, why will you not therefore agree to meet with myself, meet with Anne Clwyd and your good self, and actually get to the bottom of these serious concerns which you clearly dismiss, which is based on evidence and based on fact? You're in denial, First Minister, and it's the patients and clinicians of Wales that are suffering because of it.
Anne Clwyd has produced no evidence and no facts. I have asked her, the Minister for Health has asked her, she's produced nothing but anonymous comments that are unattributable. We don't know where they're from, we don't know whether they are correct or not, they can't be investigated. I'm afraid we have asked her on more than one occasion to produce the evidence to back up her claims. I've done it, Minister of Health has done it, I've done it to her in person and in writing. She has not done it. But I do notice that when asked whether he condemns Jeremy Hunt's grab of money away from the Welsh NHS, that he runs away from it. That is his shame and his party's shame. I notice he does not mention the airport. 9% increase in passengers, something he got completely wrong. I notice that he doesn't mention electrification, an area where he truly had the opportunity to stand up for Wales, and he has failed. His party tweeted half an hour ago that the Welsh government should pay for electrification. That's his idea of standing up for Wales. In reality, all he is, in the words of Robbie Burns, is a wee, sleekered, cowering, timorous beastie.
I think I've been transported to another house. Can we please calm down and no more shouting across the benches? We now move to the Leader of the Welsh Liberal Democrats, Kirsty Williams.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. First Minister, in January 2013, there were 199 vulnerable young children waiting more than 14 weeks to access child and adolescent psychiatric services. In January of this year, that number had quadrupled to almost 800. Why is your government unable to provide timely help for some of our most vulnerable young people in their time of need?
That is something that we're aware of as a government. It's right to say that demand has increased quite rapidly over that time. And what we are, and I know what the Health Minister is looking at the moment, is to make sure that we look to provide the services that will be required in the future, so we don't have those long waiting lists, to ensure that our children do get access as quickly as possible to the mental health services that they require.
First Minister, child health experts agree that early intervention is key to preventing problems later on in life, and your spiralling waiting lists are forcing parents to turn in desperation to the private sector for help, private sector care that they can often ill afford. Now, last week, Dr. Elspeth Webb of Cardiff University said that whilst there were very many good staff working in CAMHS services in Wales, they were operating with only 20 to 40% of the recommended staffing levels. Could you outline to the Chamber what steps you are taking to tackle the chronic understaffing of this vital service?
It is true to say that it has been difficult to recruit psychiatrists, but as the member will know, we do have a medical recruitment campaign that we have been running in order to attract more people into difficult to reach specialities. In terms of the service that is available in Wales, of course, every patient who is receiving specialist mental health care is guaranteed a right to have a care and treatment plan, something that's unique to Wales. It doesn't exist elsewhere. It does mean better quality of care for patients and, of course, helps them to achieve their goals in recovery, introduced, of course, as the member will know, via the mental health measure. What is now needed, I accept, is to ensure that the provision of service keeps pace with the demand.
But First Minister, these problems are not new, and they were brought to your government's attention by your own inspectorate and by the Wales Audit Office back in January, when it said that concerns that were raised about CAM services back in 2009 had not been properly addressed. Young people are still being admitted to adult mental health wards. Professionals are still failing to share information, and there are still grave concerns about patients being discharged from treatment. Now, despite the introduction of that mental health measure and some £250,000 investment in the service, it is still obviously falling short. First Minister, when will your government be in a position to ensure that this crucially important part of our mental health service actually delivers for the children and young people of Wales? When?
I'm grateful that the Leader of the Liberal Democrats acknowledges the substantial investment that's been made. I'm building, of course, on the mental health measure. And as I already mentioned, there has been a significant increase in the demand on the service, and it is right to say, therefore, that the level of service at this moment in time could be improved. And that is something that I know the Health Minister is very keen to do. I agree with her entirely that when it comes to early intervention, that is very, very important. That, of course, can be done in other ways, not just through CAMS, but in terms of ensuring there's access to advice services. I know, for example, in my own town that there are a number of organisations who do provide that service, and we do signpost people to those organisations as a first step. But nevertheless, the Health Minister and I both understand that as far as CAMS is concerned, that more needs to be done in order to ensure a more holistic service, such as, for example, ensuring that information is shared by professionals.
We now move back to questions on the paper, and question 3, Simon Thomas.
Llywydd, beth yw llwyddiant mwyaf Llywodraeth Cymru wrth fynd i'r afael a thlodi yng Nghymru?
Jobs Growth Wales.
Diolch, Gweinidog. Mae hefyd yn wir bod poverty tlodi absolute ar ôl costau tai yng Nghymru ar gyfer plant wedi cynyddu yn y degawd diwetha, ac mae'n uwch naw nag oedd e yn tai blynedd cyntaf cynulliad. Felly, heb sôn am y bobl mewn swyddi, be newch chi dros blant mewn tlodi yng Nghymru?
Wel, ni'n gwybod, wrth gwrs, ynglyn â sicrhau bod plant yn cael ei codi mas o dlodi. Mae'n sicrhau, wrth gwrs, bod yr oedolion yn y tŷ yn gallu cael ffordd o gael gwaith, na'r ffordd, wrth gwrs, i sicrhau bod incwm y teulu yn codi. Yn ôl, wrth gwrs, yr adroddiad strategaeth tlodi plant y flwyddyn diwetha, nath yr adroddiad hynny sôn am y ffaith bod llai nawr o oedolion yn gadael heb unrhyw cymwysteriau o gwbl o'r ysgol neu o'r coleg, a hefyd wrth gwrs bod y bwlch oedd yna ynglyn ag addysg rhwng rhywun oedd yn cael bwyd ysgol am ddim a rhywun oedd ddim wedi lleihau rhwng 2090 a 2011 a 12. So felly, mae yna bethau wedi cael ei wneud. Mae fe'n anodd wrth gwrs i wneud popeth byddwn ni eisiau achos y ffaith bod dim pob twl sy'n gyda ni ar hyn o bryd. Ond, mae'n bwysig dros ben bod ni yn parhau gyda'r strategaeth tlodi plant mwyn sicrhau bod mwy o blant yn cael cyfle i gael ei dynnu mas o tlodi.
First Minister, will you join me in welcoming the above inflation increase in the minimum wage to £6.50 per hour announced by the coalition government in London, which will benefit 73,000 people in Wales and help reduce poverty in Wales also?
This is about what the Welsh Government is doing. This is about what the Welsh Government is doing.
I'm just asking to welcome
this.
No,
I know what you asked. You asked about this is what the Welsh Government is doing. I don't think it was part of the question. Question 4, Aled Roberts. Aled Roberts.
Oh, sorry. Pa gamau mae Llywodraeth Cymru wedi cymryd i fynd i'r afel a ffrindiau staff yn y gwasanaeth iechyd sy'n gallu siarad Cymraeg?
Mae'r fframwaith y gwasanaethau Cymraeg mewn iechyd a gwasanaethau cymdeithasol y lansio yn mis Tachwedd o 2012 yn lliwio gwelliannau. Mae'n cynnwys amcan penodol i gynyddu gallu gweithlu y gwasanaeth iechyd a gofal cymdeithasol i ddarparu gwasanaethau Cymraeg, a mae nifer o fyrddau iechyd wedi cymryd camau i wneud gwelliannau.
Prif Weinidog, nes i gyfarfod efo meddygon dan hyfforddiant yn y gogledd rhyw bythefnos yn ôl, ac roedd yna gryn siom efo'r niferoedd o Gymru Cymraeg sydd yn mynd am hyfforddiant fel meddygon teulu. Pa gamau priodol a pha monitro sy'n cael ei wneud o'ch canllawiau newydd chi sydd wedi bod mewn grym rwan ers rhyw 15 mis?
Wel, mae pob bwrdd iechyd wedi cymryd hwn ymlaen. Enghraifft, y mwrdd nid chi sôn am y gogledd, gaf i ganolbwyntio felly ar Betsi Cadwaladr. Mae yna fframwaith sgiliau ieithyddol wedi cael ei baratoi. Bydd hwn yn meddwl fel rhan o'r broses recrwtio, bydd rheolwyr yn gorfod ystyried demograffig ar ardal mwyn sicrhau bod pob swydd sy'n dod lan yn y dyfodol yn cael ei asesu ynglyn â beth yw'r gofyn ieithyddol am y swydd hynny. So felly bydd hwn yn rhan gwreiddiol o beth bydd Bwrdd Iechyd Betsi Cadwaladr yn wneud yn y dyfodol.
Susie Davis.
Diolch, Llywydd. First Minister, Welsh language, of course, is pervasive across all government departments. So can you tell me what the Department for Health and Social Services is doing in terms of contact with schools and colleges to encourage interesting and relevant subject matter and vocabulary about the NHS being brought into lesson plans in those schools and colleges?
Well, I mean, in terms of Welsh in education, we are, of course, as the member will know, in a position where we've provided great support for the language over the years, as the European Commission itself has recognised. And, of course, we're reviewing the position of Welsh in education in order to strengthen the language's position, both in Welsh medium schools, bilingual, and in English medium schools. Through that, of course, if we increase the number of young people who go to Welsh medium schools or bilingual schools, so we hope to increase the number of those who are studying science, and therefore, of course, at the end of the day, increase the number who are looking to enter any of the medical professions and who are able to use the Welsh language.
Alan Fred Jones.
Diolch yn fawr iawn. Mae'r prinder meddygon teulu sydd â sgiliau dwyieithog erbyn hyn yn argyfwng yn y gogledd orllewin. Da ni'n methu hyd yn oed cael meddygon o'r fath i ardal fel Dyffryn Nantlle. Beth sydd yn digwydd, ydych chi'n sôn bod gan y byrdau iechyd strategaeth mewn lle, ond beth sy'n cael ei wneud ar lefel colegau meddygol yng Nghymru i geisio annog mwy o Gymru Cymraeg i ddod i studio yno ac i hyfforddi hefyd yn y gogledd fel bod nhw'n dybycach wedyn o aros yno?
Nid felly yw'r problem yma, nid problem o bobl ddim yn moyn dod i'r gogledd orllewin. Un o'r problemau sydd wedi cael ei ddweud wrtho fi yw'r ffaith bod bobl yn eisiau dod fel meddygon i'r ardal, ond mae rhaid ffindo swydd i gwir neu gwragedd, o achos y ffaith bod nhw'n hefyd yn edrych am gael swyddi yn yr ardal. Mae hwn yn rhywbeth sydd wedi dod i fi o doctoriaid ei hunain. So, mae hwn yn rhywbeth hollol odd mewn ffordd, bobl yn gweud nawr, yna beth yn wedi gweud. Wy'n siŵr bod yna bobl sydd eisiau practiso fel meddygon teulu yn y gogledd orllewin, ond dyw'r modd o ddatrys hynny ddim mor amlwg a dim ond rhoi mwy o arian i bobl. Mae rhaid edrych ar hwn mewn ffordd holistig.
Question 5, Mark Isherwood.
The Welsh Government provided to local authorities on setting their budget plans?
Well, local authorities are autonomous. They are responsible for the decision that they make.
Thank you. Well, one, in fact, North East Wales local authority told me that they're protecting their reserves now, reconfiguring services now, and already planning ahead for their 2015-16 budgets, knowing that further reductions are to follow. But another told me that they've not taken service decisions this year, that some councils have taken because they need certainty from the Welsh Government for future budgets with a 3-year indicative settlement so that they can plan. Which is correct?
Well, each local authority can take their own approach. It's a matter for them. They are responsible ultimately to their electorate, and they are responsible for setting their own budgets.
Roger Glyn Thomas.
Serch hynny, Prif Weinidog, yma yna broblem pan mae awdurdodau lleol yn gorfod ceisio sicrhau bod i cyllideb nhw yn hyfyw. ac yn gorfod torri nôl ar rhai gwasanaethau, ac wrth wneud hynny, yn aml iawn yn gallu mynd i'n groes i fwriadau ac i uchelgais Llywodraeth Cymru. Er enghraifft, mae gan Llywodraeth Cymru uchelgais o weld mwy a mwy o bobl yn cymeryd ymarfer corff, ac eto i gyd yma awdurdodau lleol yn gorfod edrych ar eu cynhaliaeth nhw o feisydd chwarae ac yn y blaen. Mae gan Lywodraeth Cymru fwriad i sicrhau fod mwy o ddefnydd yn cael ei wneud o lyfrgelloedd ar yr un pryd i ni'n gweld lyfrgelloedd yn cael ei cau oherwydd y pwysau ar y gyllideb. Sut mae modd cysoni y penderfyniadau cyllidebol hyn gyda bwriadau ac uchelgais a gweledigaeth Llywodraeth Cymru?
Byddwn ni'n wrth gwrs i awdurdodau lleol i rannu pob uchelgais sydd gyda ni. Wrth gweud hynny, wrth gwrs, mae'n bwysig i sylweddoli bod awdurdodau lleol fel pob lefel o lywodraeth yn ystyried amser anodd iawn ynglyn â phenderfynu beth dylai'r gyllideb i fod yn dros y flwyddyn nesaf ac i fod yn onest ynglyn â blynyddoedd i ddod. Mae hyn wrth gwrs o achos toriadau yn yr arian sydd wedi dod i ni fel llywodraeth a felly i lywodraeth leol. Ond byddwn ni'n dweud wrth Llywodraeth leol i ystyried yn fanwl beth yw blaenoriaethau nhw, nid i dorri ar draws y bwrdd, salami slicing fel maen nhw'n gweud yn Saesneg, ond i ystyried i blaenoriaethau ac i sicrhau bod cyllideb gyda nhw sydd yn dangos i blaenoriaethau nhw a nid dim ond torri ar draws y bwrdd.
Question 6, Angela Burns.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Good afternoon, First Minister. Will you please indicate when the Special Education Needs Bill will be introduced?
Well, we hope to be able to agree a way forward that will allow us to introduce such a bill before the elections, clearly. And, of course, we'll discuss this as part of the government's legislative programme later today. But the intention is to introduce it before the elections.
Thank you. That was entirely the answer I was seeking. And once again, I would reiterate that the Welsh Conservatives would support the government in trying to bring forward a holistic bill that will deal with special educational needs requirements of children and young people here in Wales. But I would like to see that bill come forward to this place and on the statute book before the end of this Assembly. And we will support you in that endeavour.
I'm delighted to be in a position that I've given a full and complete answer to a member on the Conservative benches. I trust it'll be something that doesn't happen very often.
Simon Thomas.
Diolch, Llywydd. Gweinidog, dwi'n yn croesawu beichu newydd gwaed ynglyn â ffaith bod ein bwriad gan Llywodraeth i gyflwyno'r bil yma cyn etholiad nesaf, a dwi'n o fan Plaid Cymru yn gwaed y byddwn ni'n cydweithio gyda chi i wneud yn siŵr bod hwnna'n digwydd. Yn y cyfamser, wrth gwrs, mae nawr cynnig o dryswch yn y ffordd mae plant gyda anghenion arbennig yn cael datganiad a'u peidio, gyda rai awdurdodau yn dal i foi datganiadau, a rai, fel ych chi'n gwybod, dwi'n meddwl, Prif Weinidog, yn gwrthod wneud hynny ac yn trio wneud y lawr fyw cynlluniau dysgu annibynnol ac ati. Ffordd mae'r Llywodraeth nawr yn mynd i sicrhau cysondeb mynediant i'r gwasanaethau mae'r plant yma angen yng Nghymru tra bod ni'n aros am y deddfwriaeth.
Wel, wy'n siŵr bydd y Gwynion Iechyd yn ystyried hwn ynglyn â ym mha ffordd allwn ni gael cysondeb cyn bod unrhyw deddfwriaeth yn dod i rym. Yn y diwedd, wrth gwrs, y ffordd o sicrhau cysondeb yw wneud hwnna trwyddo modd statudol. Mae hwn yn rhywbeth mae'r ail yn iawn. Mae yna wahaniaethau rhwng awdurdodau lleol ynglyn â hynna sydd yn rhoi datganiad i rai plant yn fwy rhwydd felly na awdurdodau eraill. Na i ofyn i'r Gweinidog i sgrifennu at yr aelod, ond wrth gofio o'r ffaith, wrth gwrs, bod yna gyfleon o gael ynglyn â'r bil ei hunan.
Question 7, Susie Davis.
Diolch, Llywydd. Will the First Minister provide an update on the provision of free education for 3-year-olds?
Yes, all children in Wales are entitled to a free part-time foundation phase place from the term following their 3rd birthday. We remain, of course, wholly committed to the foundation phase and its approach to teaching and learning. And I can confirm that all local authorities are meeting their statutory duty.
Well, thank you very much for that answer, First Minister, because I was rather concerned to hear that Swansea Council was not minded to allow the provision of free education for 3-year-olds other than in its own council-provided settings. In your own constituency of Bridgend, also in my region, the local authority is currently looking to save money by reducing council-funded nursery provision. Where council-run nurseries vulnerable to cuts are the only setting for free education provision for 3-year-olds, do you think it's unwise for a council to deny suitable non-council-run nurseries the option to offer that provision?
Well, councils must meet their statutory duty. It's clear what they must do. How they meet that is a matter for them, but they cannot fail to meet it.
Question 8, Lynn Eagle.
Will the First Minister outline any discussions he's held with ministers in relation to so-called legal highs?
Well, I do meet with the Minister for Health and Social Services on a regular basis, and he is aware, of course, of your concern.
Thank you, First Minister. Unfortunately, barely a week goes by now without news of another tragedy linked to these so-called legal highs. And we are seeing major problems with the use of these substances in my own constituency. I did have a very constructive meeting with the Health Minister just before recess, and locally I've been liaising with the Health Board and the police on these issues for some time. First Minister, it is essential that we adopt a cross-cutting approach to tackling this scourge in Wales. Moving forward, will you commit to coordinating these really important efforts across Welsh Government?
Yes, I mean, just to emphasise, of course, we can't do anything in terms of legislation. The Misuse of Drugs Act is not devolved, nor is it in Scotland for that matter. And so moving forward with legislation to categorise new drugs as they appear, because of course a lot of them are new, is not a matter for us. That said, however, it is essential that we work together across departments to tackle the harms and devastation that these substances can cause. Health officials already work very closely with those from local government and education to provide a coordinated response to education, prevention, and in terms of addressing the availability of the new, I think, psychoactive substances is the phrase that's used here in Wales. I do also understand that the Gwent Area Planning Board is coordinating the local response to tackling new psychoactive substances, where the Health Board, Police and Public Health are all fully engaged.
Darren Miller.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. First Minister, no one doubts that we need to reduce the harm which can be caused to people by the use of so-called legal highs. But I am concerned about the Welsh Government's funding of the Wedi Norse project, which of course allows people to send in substances for testing and the results of those substances to be published online. And unfortunately, I've received some evidence that this is being used by people who are pushing steroids that are made at home. And there are actually links which have been sent to me in relation to the UK Muscle website, which is a bodybuilding forum, showing that this might actually be happening. What work is the Welsh Government doing to ensure that this Wedi Norse project is not exploited by people who want to peddle substances which could potentially be very harmful to people here in Wales?
Well, let's be clear that the Wedi Norse project is designed to ensure that people are able to send samples to that to the project in order to understand what's in them, especially at a time when new drugs are being synthesised at an ever-increasing rate. When the Misuse of Drugs Act was actually passed in 1971, there were far fewer drugs on the market, and those that were there had not yet been synthesised into new forms. Cocaine, for example, into crack. And the legislation has had to keep pace with that. So it is important that we understand what is appearing on the streets of Wales in order to be able to deal with it. I take the point that the member makes. Of course, the project would not want to be some kind of testing system for those who want to see if what they've produced is effective or not. It's important to ensure that is monitored. Important, of course, to ensure that we continue to work with, for example, gyms to make sure that they make their users of the gym that is available, or that they are aware, rather, of the damage that long-term steroid abuse can actually make to people, leading, of course, ultimately to early death.
Question 9, Peter Black.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Will the First Minister make a statement on fees paid to outside organisations to manage programmes associated with its anti-poverty strategy?
The fee for all managed programmes associated with our Tackling Poverty agenda will vary, depending, of course, on the nature of the service.
Well, thank you for that answer, First Minister. You will know that in terms of the discretionary assistance fund, 16% of the total budget for that has actually gone in terms of managing that project, which in regards to the credit union project, of the £4.7 million available over a number of years, nearly £1 million has been spent on consultants to manage that particular project. Given that very high percentage of those monies being spent in that administration, do you not think that the Welsh Government needs to review the way these projects are managed so that more money can go to the front end?
Well, when it comes to the discretionary assistance fund, the UK Government took the view it would cost £2.1 million to administer in Wales. The cost is actually £1.38 million, which is considerably less than the DWP estimate and the amount that they indeed allocated. The cost of the administration of the fund has no impact on the amount of grant money available to those applying to the fund. The budget remains at £10.2 million. and looking at the statistics regarding the performance of the fund, they seem to have improved, particularly over the course of the last during the course of this financial year.
Mark Isherwood.
Thank you. Clearly, the Welsh Government's main anti-poverty strategy is communities first. Following the Wales Audit Office concerns in reports during the last Assembly on the lack of effective corporate governance embedded in grant recipient bodies outside local government in Wales, the Welsh Government has now made most of the grant recipient bodies be the local authorities. How is the Welsh Government therefore ensuring that those local authorities, whilst fulfilling the grant recipient body role in terms of financial and human resource management and audit, nonetheless ensures that the funding is focused on anti-poverty strategies that the local community has identified and is working with them upon?
Well, that's what the money is for. We've sought to ensure that the money is made available and spent in an appropriate way. But the whole point of Communities First is to ensure that projects come up rather than are forced down, and to ensure, of course, that people are fully engaged in what they believe will be the most effective projects to tackle poverty in their own areas.
Lindsay Whittle.
Diolch, Llywydd. First Minister, in recent years there's been a move towards outsourcing service provisions and administrative duties of government programmes to private companies. And of course we've bad examples of A4E and Atos, amongst others, in delivering, I think, very poor value for money. Are you confident that public funds being used by your government to pay private companies is going to where it is needed most, and not just into dividends, profits, shares and fat cat salaries? And why don't we let local government run these schemes?
Well, local government, of course, has been responsible for paying chief executives up to £200,000 a year, or such as £195,000 a year, so they don't have the best of records, some of them, in terms of their own position. That said, as far as what the member has said, I can say to him, I do not approve of outsourcing services to profit-making organisations. That is a position that this government holds very strongly. It's for local government to ensure, of course, that they are in a position where they can ensure value for money and a good service and proper terms and conditions for their staff. Outsourcing services to organisations that seek to make a profit is not, in my view, the way to do that.
Question 10, Clare Griffith.
Llywydd, pa ganllawiau mae Llywodraeth Cymru yn ei rhoi awdurdodau addysg lleol i ddelio sefyllfaoedd lle mae amgylchiadau ariannol yn creu anhawster i gydymffurfio rheolau gwisg ysgol?
Wel, cyrff Llywodraeth i ysgolion sy'n gyfrifol am bolisi gwisg ysgol, ni fel Llywodraeth wedi rhoi canllawiau i gyrff Llywodraeth i ar bolisi gwisg ysgol gan gynghori ar gadw cost gwisg ysgol mor uchel a sy'n bosib, ac wrth gwrs mae yna grant ar gael mwyn sicrhau bod y cost o uniform ysgolion yn cael ei lleihau.
Eich chi'n dweud bod grant ar gael, ac eich chi'n gywir i ddweud hynny, mae ar gael i'r rhai sy'n hawlio cynio am ddim, mae ryw 83,500 o filoedd o'r rheini, ond wrth gwrs mae yna 200,000 o blant yn byw mewn clodi yng Nghymru, ac felly fydden ni'n dadle felly bod angen gwneud mwy. Mae yna anghysondeb ar draws Cymru o safbwynt y math o gefnogaeth sydd ar gael. Mae'n amrywio ysgol i ysgol ac awdurdod i awdurdod. Mae yna lawer o ddiffyg ymwybyddiaeth hefyd, dwi'n meddwl, ynglyn â'r math o gefnogaeth sydd ar gael yna. Ac a fyddwch chi'n cytuno fi hefyd bod angen gwell gweithdrefnau mwyn osgoi sefyllfaoedd lle mae disgyblion yn cael eu cosbi am fethu cwrdd a rhai o'r gofynion o ran gwisg ysgol, a hynny wrth gwrs am resymau sydd yn gwbl y tu hwnt i'w rheolaeth ei hunain.
Wel, wy'n gwybod bod yr aelod yn sôn am unigolyn, ac wrth gwrs o beth dwi'n deall, bydde lot fawr o gynsyrn gyda fi ynglyn â'r ffordd gath yr unigolyn hynny i thrin. Mae'n bwysig dros ben bod ysgolion yn ystyried amgylchiadau pob plentyn yn yr ysgolion mwyn sicrhau bod nhw ddim yn cael ei gosbi. O achos y ffaith falle bod na ddim gobeith yn nhw gyda'i rieni nhw i brynu gwisg ysgol bydd yr ysgol yn eisiau. So felly mae'n bwysig dros ben bod ysgolion yn cymryd modd cydymdeimladol tuag at unigolion, tuag at plant ysgol mwyn sicrhau bod neb yn cael ei gosbi o achos y ffaith falle bod ddim yn bosib iddyn rieni nhw i brynu pob ran o'r gwisg ysgol.
Jonathan Saunders.
First Minister, I'm sure that you would agree with me that in 2014 to learn of a young 15-year-old young lady pupil punished for wearing wrong school shoes despite an explanation from a mother earlier explaining of their current financial circumstances is terrible in this day and age. It does raise many questions, and I have taken it upon myself to write to Conway County Borough Council to ascertain what their advice and guidance is. Would you agree with me that this situation must never happen again to any of our school children in Wales, and also that any school uniform policy is one that involves the school governors, the teachers, the staff, and it's one that encompasses common sense, individual discretion and compassion?
Yes, and I think I said that in the letter, in the answer that I gave to the previous member. I have also had concern over the years where I have seen situations where school uniforms can only be purchased from a particular shop at a particular price that is well beyond what the price would be in, for example, a supermarket. I think schools should think very carefully about implementing policies such as that, that provide perhaps a source of income for the school, that much is true, possibly, but nevertheless financially penalise parents.
Thank you, First Minister.